So, wonderful, Jimmy. We are going to pretend like nobody is listening and we're going to talk about the things that you're not really supposed to talk about, those big experiences. And of course, we know why you're not supposed to talk about them. It's really important that you don't cling to things and make this big identity out of something. Or, on the other hand, turn it into something that is just this story that you kind of trot out at dinner parties. We get that stuff. But I am incredibly nosy. Even though we've been on several retreats together, you've not done anything Zen stinky at all. You have shared none of your stories with me. And so I'm going to totally put you on the spot and ask you about those big experiences. So maybe first just to touch on, what was your kind of access point into your first big experience that shifted your way of viewing?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's great to be here. I should say first, it's nice to hang out with you in this way. Normally, we're in a much more intense environment when we hang out. So this is, yeah, nice. And I would say that my first big breakthrough experience was when I learned Vedic meditation, which is another name for transcendental meditation. And I was interested in that because I was struggling in my life. I was dealing with insomnia and depression, and I just wanted something that would sort me out, something that would help me cope with the problems that I was going through. So I experimented a little bit with meditation on my own, but that didn't really work out too well, as most people who try meditation find out.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I felt like a failure because I couldn't control my thoughts. I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. And I found somebody locally who taught this kind of meditation. I went along, did a course, and she gave me a mantra, which is a soothing sound with a vibrational quality, taught me how to hold that effortlessly in my mind. And I couldn't believe it. I, in a very short space of time, was experiencing a sense of inner stillness and silence that was completely new to me. My nervous system felt de-excited for the first time. My mind was quiet. And although most people would think this is not a good thing, I found I was even falling asleep a little bit in the meditation sessions in the room with the woman. Now, I don't consider falling asleep a great thing nowadays, but at the time, as an insomniac, I thought, I can't believe this. I'm actually even almost falling asleep here. So what I was experiencing was a state of very deep relaxation beyond anything that I could access on my own. And I went home from that course. It was a 4-day course. I went home from that, went to bed at 9 p.m. and slept for about 12 hours. So there was a considerable physical change that happened to me while I learned that kind of meditation. And that was the first time I realized that I was onto something super powerful with all of this. Bear in mind, my meditation sessions were only 20 minutes twice a day at this point. So we're not talking about extreme meditation retreats or anything like that. And even this 20 minutes twice a day had such a powerful, profound shift in the way I was operating, not just in terms of sleep, but in terms of the way my mind was just functioning in daily life. I had this sense of inner quietness that was new to me, and I felt kind of blissed out for no reason, which was great. And I used to drink very heavily back then. And I suddenly found...
a bit of a clubber as well, were you
I
not?
was so hardcore into the DJing world and the clubbing life and going to Ibiza. And I used to drink every single night just to kind of get me into a relaxed place. And suddenly I didn't want it. I just thought, well, my mind feels nice and my body feels nice. Why would I need to ingest something? And my food choices started to change. I didn't want to crave junk food as much. So yeah, I would say that was the first time I realized, wow, there is something here to be explored with meditation and the world of spirituality. Although I should say I was very anti-spirituality at the time. I was still in a very scientific mindset that said, I can do meditation because I believe it's scientifically proven, you know.
That really resonates with me. So the big experience that came next.
After a couple of years of doing that 20 minutes twice a day, I felt pretty good and I wanted more. So I was kind of craving the bliss that was coming from the meditation and craving more of this contentment and nice feeling that was coming from it. I now, in retrospect, realize that this craving may not be a good thing, but at the time I didn't see it that way. So I booked myself onto my first ever meditation retreat, again, working with the mantra, but this time with some yoga postures, some breathing practices. And on the last day of that retreat, I had this amazing, what I call a heart-opening experience. It wasn't an awakening or a Kensho or anything like that, but it was this all-pervading sense of universal love. It just really sort of washed over me. And I just felt very tender and very moved by it. And there was definitely a strong sense of bliss in there.
That doesn't sound very scientific, Jimmy.
Well, this is the thing, you see. It was also very confusing to me because I thought, oh my God, this is the chakras that these people have been talking about that I didn't believe in. And this feeling can't be explained. And so now my new atheist paradigm, I was very into Richard Dawkins, all that, was being really challenged. And I didn't know what to do about that. So I went home from the retreat very happy, very loved up. That feeling lasted for about 2 weeks. And I just felt so blissed out. I kept telling my friends, it's like taking happy pills, but without taking the pills. I'm just feeling like this all the time. And I'm so productive and I'm not bothered by anything. And this is great, you know.
Cheaper and less of a hangover.
Yeah. And also it did lead to, like you just alluded to, this slight suspicion that maybe I was wrong about these spiritual beliefs. Maybe these Eastern yogis and Buddhists and mystics and people, maybe they're onto something. Maybe there's something here, right? Maybe these energy centers in the body called the chakras actually are there. They're not just made up. And also, what's going on with consciousness? I started looking into that and it was like, hang on a minute. I thought I could just Google it and there'd be some article that tells me how the brain creates consciousness. And now I'm discovering all these articles explaining how it's this giant mystery and nobody really understands it. And there's no proven scientific explanation of it. So now I'm wide open. I'm like, well, okay, I have to discover this for myself. You know, what is consciousness? What am I at the deepest, most fundamental level? So I became a bit obsessed then with watching spiritual YouTube videos and reading books and things like that.
And I'm sure that's a phase that certainly resonates with me, and lots of listeners might recognize that in themselves for sure. That real hunger for, I want more and more. And so where did that lead you?
So let me think. That went on for quite a while. I did a few other courses in the mantra meditation world. But at some point, I came across a book called The Science of Enlightenment by who I now consider my meditation teacher, Shinzen Young. And this created a bit of a breakthrough, I would say, in my understanding more than anything else, in the realization that I can meditate in a way that isn't just soothing the mind and the nervous system and bringing up the bliss, but actually there's another way of working with meditation to do with insight. So I can actually look directly at the nature of mind and see how that works. I can also try to look deeper into the sense of self, beyond the personality, beyond the ego structure, into the mystery that seems to be me. And also there's a way of working with suffering and also other insights like impermanence. So there was a whole treasure trove of things to be explored that was opened up to me by, I'd already read some books on Buddhism, but this one particular book really struck me as true because it was written by somebody with a depth of practice which was unimaginable to me. You know, he's an 80-year-old former monk and also neuroscience research consultant. And I could just feel the wisdom flowing out of the book. And I just believed in this, and I believed in this person. I believed in these practices. So I took that on pretty seriously, started doing practices on other retreats in other styles. So Vipassana, jhana practice, deep concentration practice, noting, Mahasi noting practice. And these were all different ways to explore the nature of mind and also to shift into a sense of freedom that I hadn't known at that point. Because this is when I started to realize, okay, I don't have to believe my thoughts. I don't have to react to these emotions. And so that starts to open up a level of freedom which wasn't available to me before that.
Amazing. And so the big shift, direct experience, did this come next?
Yeah. So I did realize through my contact with Shinzen and all of that, and also some other people like Henry Schuckman. I read his book on Zen, which was exciting to me. And The Three Pillars of Zen, of course, was a great book. And that had ordinary people having powerful, direct experiences. So I started to realize there's something here. Okay, there's a sudden shift that can happen. And I knew that wasn't in my experience, especially because I'd heard Henry Schuckman give this koan, this question, and I knew I didn't have the answer to it. And the question was, what is my original face, the one I had before my parents were born? He told me, not personally, but he told me through something. It was a recording or a book, I can't remember, to meditate on this question. And so I knew I didn't have the answer to that. It was just obvious. So that got me really intrigued. I almost became obsessed with this question, meditating on it, thinking about it, trying to figure it out somehow. And at some point, I heard about the Enlightenment Intensive. So I knew, okay, because of the person who told me about this, where I got it from, I thought, I believe in this. This could do it. They meditate on the question, who am I? So I'm going to go along to it.
And the Enlightenment Intensive, it's a retreat. And how long is this retreat? Because people have this kind of sense of disbelief around intensives, EIs, breakthrough intensives. Talk to me about that.
Well, this is a bit of a classic story, actually, because when I heard about this originally, I heard about a place in Canada where they do a 10-day retreat, and you not only do the Enlightenment intensive practices, but you also microdose, and there's all this other stuff going on. And they said in 10 days, we'll get you there with all these different things. We throw the kitchen sink at it. So I literally booked myself on that. And in the meantime, I wanted to get a taste of it. So I booked myself on a 3-day intensive. It would have been a 3-day intensive and then 1 day for integration. So I had no belief whatsoever that I was going to have an awakening on a 3-day intensive, but at least I would know what I was getting myself into for when I flew to Canada and did the 10-day. So yeah, booked myself onto this. Luckily, it wasn't too far away, 3 hours away from here. Turned up. And as I always do on retreats, I let all my other practices go and just engaged with this fully. And on this retreat, you are working on the question, who am I? From 6 a.m. till 11 or 12 at night. And it's very, very intense, as you know. So you don't let up on the question. In the practice room, you are on the question. When you are walking outside, you are on the question. When you're eating, you are on the question. It's just non-stop. Turning your attention towards what seems to be you and going as deep as you can into your own self-nature. And yeah, it was a very, very powerful experience. And I had amazing sort of mini breakthroughs with the stuff that was coming up. So to do with self-understanding and to do with also various traumas and problems that I experienced were kind of worked through almost in a therapeutic way. But I got to the end of the retreat, having really thrown the kitchen sink at it, honestly. I got to the end of the retreat and there was no breakthrough. I knew I didn't have the answer to the question, what was my original face, you know? And also because of the way the retreat's set up, you know, you can go and say to the people running it, you know, am I getting it? What's happening here? And they can steer you in the right direction. So it was very clear that the breakthrough I was looking for wasn't there. So the retreat came to an end and I was about to go to my room when one of the guys running it said, "Hey, Jimmy, can I speak to you for a second?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And walked over.
Is this my friend Luke?
This would be Matthew, but Luke was also in the room. So yeah, these two brothers that you know, you trained with, right, in the Zen world. Okay. So yeah, they were running this retreat and one of them, Matthew, said, "Can you just come and sit with me?" And I went and sat with him and he looked me right in the eyes and said, "Tell me who you are." And suddenly, in that moment, there was a shift far beyond anything that I could have imagined up to that point. And I really could never, ever since then find any words that would explain it, but I'm going to attempt it. So it was as if my entire sense of being this person with this life, with this history and these hopes for the future, who was born on this day and will die on this day, all of that just went in not even a second. It was an experience that seemed to be outside of time. And what was known in a very direct and very obvious way This is not something you could make up. It was just known on such a deep level that my whole life up until that moment had been almost a case of mistaken identity. There was something more fundamental than being this person called Jimmy with this life that's always been here, actually, but had always been overlooked. And it just shone through in the most powerful way that it just knocked out my sense of self completely. And the first thing that came from that was riotous laughter. I just couldn't stop laughing. And I didn't know why I was laughing, but I was absolutely just laughing with my whole body. You know, it was just like the funniest thing in the world. And I managed to say to Matthew through the laughter, "Why is it so funny?" And he said, "Well, they do call it the cosmic joke." And then we just laughed even more. And now he's laughing and I'm laughing. And at some point it settled down and he asked me some questions that I designed to kind of help him meet me in that place and also discover, you know, what's going on with me. I won't say what those questions are because I don't want to put things into people's head. But yeah, that helped us kind of communicate while I was in this highly, highly unusual state, but very, very, very nice. I mean, it's a state that is so satisfying that there really isn't anything to say in the moment. And it's also beyond a state. Although there's a lot of bells and whistles that come with it in terms of the bliss and the peace, there's also a shift that goes right down to the core of identity that is so beyond anything I could have dreamed of in that moment. And from that, we had our little conversation. There was some laughing. There was some silence that we shared because there really didn't seem like there was anything to say. And then from there, I went up to my room and I was going to go to bed. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Let's have a little look in the mirror. And so I looked in the mirror and it was the most bizarre experience of my life because that face I recognized, but what was looking wasn't what was normally looking. And I'll leave it there. But it
There was your original face.
Well, yeah, actually, that's what I thought. I looked and I thought, well, I recognize this face. Oh, but I am my original face. My original face is here. You're right. That is the moment when that koan came back. Right then. I'm getting all sort of funny talking about it.
Yeah, me too.
I know, yeah. I'm about to cry if I carry on.
It is so beautiful to hear. And for most people, I, like you, was coming at things from a very former broadcast journalist. It was all about the facts and how I could overcome all of these problems I was having by training the mind. And that was very much my focus. And I mean, it's so unbelievable what is possible. Not that you aren't incredible, darling, because you are incredible, but we're just us, aren't we? We're just ordinary people. And it is absolutely possible for ordinary people to have these incredible experiences.
Yeah, this is one of the big things that I try and put across on my meditation courses now, is that these are special experiences, but they don't happen to special people. It doesn't matter who you are. You can be a plumber or a postman. You can discover this because it's what's fundamentally already true. So it's not about becoming a master at meditation, this one. This is more about just giving yourself fully to the exploration and also surrendering. And if you're lucky, if the stars align, then yeah, you can discover this. And that has been just the most incredibly life-changing thing for me to find in this lifetime, this truth, I suppose.
It's amazing. And there will be people that say, oh yeah, but Jimmy had been doing loads of meditation. He'd kind of teed this up by doing all these practices and going down these rabbit holes of exploration. What would you say to that, having been on a few intensives yourself?
I think the time is right when the time is right. So it isn't the case that you have to do loads of purification or practices, or get yourself into a specific place. If a person finds themselves on a retreat like that, then now is the time to go for it. Now is the time to look, because there's something in you that is pushing you to move in that direction, something in you that wants to wake up. You can tell yourself all the stories about why you're there or what your reasons are for being there, but there's actually some invisible force directing you to move in that direction. And if that's there, if that urge, that desire, that calling, that yearning to know what you are at the most fundamental level, the deepest part of you, which is deep and also strangely right in front of your face when you find it, on the surface, strangely. If that calling is there, then hey, the time might be right for you. So just go for it. Don't believe the stories of I'm not worthy, I'm not ready, this only happens to other people but not me. It definitely can happen to anyone, because there's not one person alive, one human being, who doesn't already have this to be discovered within themselves.
Absolutely. And I've seen people come on these retreats almost by accident, kind of getting the wrong end of the stick, thinking that they were going to go on a nice relaxing meditation weekend and still get it with like not a lot of background in any particular practices. It's quite remarkable.
I can believe it. Yeah, I can believe it, because for some reason the causes and conditions just align to put them in the right place, right time. There's some karmic factors that will have, just arranged themselves in just the right way so that that person almost accidentally bumps into their true nature. And how wonderful is that? Yeah.
Incredible. So for the doubters out there, is it possible to have a big Kensho Satori experience on a 3-day retreat?
100% yes. And I can also tell you this because when I came back from that first retreat, the first intensive that I did, my wife opened the door and looked at me, and the first thing she said is, "You're different." She knew something was up. She said, "You're different." And she let me in, and she was looking at me like I was sort of a stranger in the house. She's so curious. Something has happened to you. And she said, go and take a selfie, because you'll want to remember this. There's something about you that looks different. And funnily enough, on my meditation courses, I sometimes show this selfie with great big wide eyes and a sort of glassy look and a hair everywhere and a beard everywhere. But yeah, so over the following few weeks, she noticed something about me was so significantly different, not just in the way I was acting and talking, but there's an energetic shift that other people can just intuitively feel pouring out of you. And so she said, "Look, I don't know what happened to you in this place. I don't read those kind of books or watch those videos. I don't really care about what consciousness is, but I want to have whatever this is," right? So we booked her on a retreat. We decided to go together. The next available one we could find, a place called Spirit Horse, which is where I met you the first time. And we went along. And in the run-up to this, she kept saying to me, "I'm not sure about this because the question doesn't speak to me. The question is, who am I?" that she's going to be meditating on. And she's saying, "Well, I already know who I am. I'm just me. And my real question should be, what's my purpose? That's what I feel like I should be meditating on. It just doesn't make sense. And also I'm Polish, so the language is different. So that question doesn't really speak to me." And I was just like, "Look, you'll be fine. We'll just get you there. You'll be okay." And of course, we got her there. And on the first day, she had a massive blowout. Biggest ever in the history of Spirit Horse, probably. Kensho, Satori, whatever you want to call it. It was massive. And yeah, it took months. I mean, she is still 2 years later, integrating what happened on that day. It's changed her life completely beyond recognition, and she is somebody who just stumbled into it.
So, big experiences since. Do you tend to be a visual person? Is it auditory stuff? Is it visions? Is it sensations? What are your flavors?
Although big experiences come and go on these retreats, there's something that never comes and goes once that first discovery is made. And I like the analogy of Santa Claus, right? There's a time in your life where you believe in Santa Claus, and then at some point something happens, and then you don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. And you don't need to do any practices or meditate on the no Santa Claus paradigm to remember. You just know, right? It's just the way it is. Whether you're having a good day or a bad day, whether you're suffering or you're not, you just know the truth about the Santa Claus thing. And it's the same with this. Even if your life's falling apart and everything's a mess, or, you know, you're acting in ways that you feel isn't very enlightened, what was discovered is true now, and you don't need to do anything for that to be true. What was discovered is still discovered at all times. So that shift that goes right down to the core of identity is always with you. So that was my sort of favorite thing about that. And then what's happened since, I would say, is a kind of exploration of that, and a deepening and a broadening of what was discovered on that day. So it's going further into it. I spoke to this one Zen master, really cool guy called Stephen Snyder, who's written some good books. And I said to him, I said, surely there's not going to be another one of those. It's like, you know, it's not going to get any more infinite, surely. Like, I feel like that is fundamentally as far as it can go. And he said, well, think of it this way. In that first big blowout experience, when you got the ultimate kind of insight, it's like discovering a new planet. And he said, now you're not going to discover a new planet, but what you can do now is all these other practices and different ways of approaching it, which is like discovering new continents within this new planet. And so that's very much what it's turned into for me. Yeah.
I love that. And the flavour of those, or do they come in a whole range of flavours?
Yeah, a range of flavours. Sorry, yeah. So I would say, for example, working with a question like, what is this? Led to a flavour of absolute presence that was so far beyond anything that I'd experienced in terms of being on the razor's edge of now, that fundamentally shifted something that's never gone back as well. It wasn't quite the big blowout of the first experience, but it's kind of like an add-on, you know? Because I find that after that first one, everything speeds up. It all just kind of goes on steroids after that. So what is this, for example, was one of those questions that I did on an intensive that gave me a sense of being so present with my direct experience of what's happening now that the part of my brain that constantly puts a conceptual overlay on everything and comments on everything and tries to manipulate things to be different to what they are or to somehow filter reality in some way, it seemed to switch off, right? So everything was just the raw, direct data of what's happening. It's the only way I can explain it. I don't know if people will understand this, but it was literally just this, what's happening now, is this, with no elaboration needed. Everything just whole, complete, perfect, exactly as it is, with a sense of stillness and beauty that was slightly hidden from me before, but was shining through very clearly when the answer to the question, what is this, came through. And it really seemed almost hilarious that my mind spends so much time going into past or going into future when the perfection of now is just shining so brightly in every moment. So it seemed to have a powerful effect on the mind, that question. I don't know if you had an experience with that similar.
That is giving me absolute chills. It resonates so deeply. Oh, where to begin? Because putting words to some of these experiences is, you've been doing a bloody great job, darling. It's incredibly difficult to put words to some of these things that have happened. What about your experiences on retreat of tapping into that collective consciousness? I'm kind of remembering one particular time when coincidences, for instance, had been out on the walk and there was a tree and its trunk suddenly became the the leg of an elephant, and I was snuggling up to this tree. It was like I was attached to the leg of this elephant. And then I've gone into my next dyad, and on the very last turn, so the person opposite me is speaking, and all of a sudden I just get such this strong sense of this elephant and this elephant skin. And so many times things like that have occurred where there's this sense of tapping into something in the collective. And I wonder if that raises anything with you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And we should point out at this point that we are not on anything. We are completely sober when we are doing these things. So, yeah, there are times when it gets very psychedelic and very out there. But at the same time, you are definitely sober and you are having these experiences with your ordinary mind. So going through the ordinary mind and experiencing it all makes a difference, I think, compared to when people do use psychedelics, because a lot of doubt can creep in after those experiences. But this seems to change things in a way that seems to stick better. So anyway, I can't remember any of those. That what you've just explained sounds very familiar to me, although I can't think of any specific examples. But I can tell you something that sounds along the same thing. So I remember being on a retreat doing the question, what am I? And for some reason, during this retreat, I started to be flooded with a lot of very intense thoughts about the state of the world at the moment, all the things I'd seen on the news that were going on at the time, which were, some terrible things happening out there in the world, which normally, I leave that behind when I go into a retreat. All that just came back into my consciousness. And I felt this terrible sense of, God, all that suffering out there in the world. And here I am kind of hiding away doing a retreat. And I started to question whether or not, am I doing something selfish here? Should I be out in the world actually doing something more proactive? And I felt about this heaviness of the world, I suppose you could say. And I was just really feeling all of that and giving myself permission to feel all of that at the deepest level possible. Because this is a situation where you're allowed to do that. Normally in life, you have to hold yourself together. But in the retreat, you can just say, this is what's happening and I'm going to go with it and surrender to it. And something about allowing myself to feel that what was coming up created this shift in the mind, in the way I was perceiving reality, in the way that I was opposite this other person. And suddenly it became very obvious to me that what is here, this sense of presence, this alive presence that seems to be me, was also right there with this other person opposite me shining through, like that we were not two in that moment. And then that started to spread out to the room. I started to feel that everyone in the room is just part of this, not just a field that we're sharing, but a very literal sense that this consciousness is not personal and doesn't belong to this Jimmy. And then that started to really expand out to this sense that everyone is this, every living thing is this. And weirdly, while this was happening, I was still having imagery of all of these terrible things that I'd seen on the news. And so I was very struck in this moment by the idea that, I am the soldier that I'd seen on the news carrying the gun, and I was the person on the receiving end of those bullets. I am not just the beauty and bliss of life, but all the horror and the torture and the torment. And there was something about that kind of really broke my heart in two. And I was crying, the person opposite me was crying, but not in a bad way. It was just one of those experiences that took me right to the extreme edge of feeling like I'd never felt before, connected to the entire universe, feeling it all, but almost happy to feel it, like as if I'm not just cleansing my own trauma, but sort of feeling the collective trauma. And it's funny talking about this because I've never talked about this before. It was something that happened and then I just have kept it to myself. But now I'm reliving it. It's like it's all coming back, that feeling of just, oh my God, it's overwhelming and yet I can hold it, Yeah, I feel a bit emotional. going back to it, but it was very powerful, and it lasted the whole day after that. Once that shift occurred, it lasted until I went to bed, and then when I woke up in the morning, I felt a bit more myself.
And I can really feel directly the beauty of that, the gorgeousness. However, for people listening that haven't experienced an intensive retreat, that might sound incredibly frightening, petrifying.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could speak to that.
Yeah, I should do actually. So the weird thing about a shift like that is that you're not you when you feel it. So everything is kind of taken care of. What is on the receiving end of an experience like that is the most fundamental aspect of you, which can handle any and all experiences. Your own death, even your death, which will occur one day, weirdly, in that kind of experience, from that state of consciousness, seems like something that is just not a problem. It will be like taking off a ill-fitting suit, because you are experiencing the aspect of you which is beyond birth and death, which I appreciate people might struggle with. And I'm not saying that's scientifically true. I'm saying that is experientially true. That's how it feels.
And I concur. It is experientially true.
And so, yeah, you don't have to worry about whether you can handle it so much, because there is an aspect of you that can handle anything. And that's what will be there when anything comes up in that kind of an experience. Yeah. Also, I would like to say that on the intensive itself, you may not have a direct experience like that, but be dealing as a normal person with your traumas and pains and various emotional baggage that comes up. And actually, people do have fears about that. But what I've seen is that when push comes to shove, everybody can handle it when it comes to it. I've never seen, there's never been a situation where somebody went to one of those and their whole life was ruined. It doesn't happen like that. You do find a way through, and you'll change for the better, even if it isn't a big enlightenment experience.
Completely agree. As someone who has experienced Vipassana and breakthrough enlightenment intensives, what differences and similarities? First of all, what's your favourite?
My favorite, I would have to say, is probably the intensive. Definitely. The intensive is much easier for a start physically, because it's shorter and it's easier in that sense. But also there's something about the intensive which is very alive, and there's an excitement that I get when I go to an intensive. The meditation retreats, I absolutely love them, and I continue to do them even now. But there's definitely a sense of I'm going there to practice and cultivate something that is a very gradual cultivation. So it's a different feeling. The intensive comes with a feeling of excitement of, oh my God, what am I going to discover here? I don't really get that at the meditation retreats. The meditation retreats are deepening what I already have here and know to be true. But God, the things that I discovered on the intensives are so wild, so out there, so unpredictable, and also so satisfying beyond anything imaginable. Yeah.
You tapped into work with koans there. Do you have a particular favourite?
Well, I guess Who Am I will always have that special place in my heart, especially because I feel like I have a relationship with this question that was tumultuous, let's say, because when I was working with it, I kept thinking, I don't like this question. It doesn't seem right. Like, who doesn't seem like the right word, because who seems to relate to who I already know I am, this Jimmy character. And it feels like, what am I would be a better question. But I carried on with Who Am I, because that's what I was directed to do. And when the shift finally came, I remember saying to Luke, now that it's here, who makes perfect sense? I get it now. So, yeah, don't give up on the question. Stick with it is my advice, because I do see people doing that. They kind of get bored and then they just move to something else. But the boredom is a part of it. The pain is a part of it. The struggle is a part of it. Go through it. That is the journey. And then, yeah, if you move through that, who knows what you might find on the other side.
So what would be your advice for people going into an intensive? How would you advise people to approach?
You know what comes to mind is that famous Zen story of see if I can remember it now, the student who goes to the master and starts asking all of these questions about practice and about enlightenment and all of this. And the master, while the student is talking, puts out 2 glasses and starts filling the student's glass up with water. And when it gets to the top, he lets it overflow and overflow and overflow onto the table. And the student suddenly freaks out and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the master says something very wise, like, "If you're too full, you won't have any space to take in anything new." And that's how I think people should approach it. You don't want to bring too many of your ideas about how this should be or what's going to happen or your training from before or even what we've spoken about on this. Use this to motivate you, but let it go, because I can promise anybody who listens to this and goes to an intensive, what you experience won't be what I've described. It will be something completely unique and surprising. So yeah, just try and let go as much as possible of all of that spiritual baggage, of all the books you've read, all the videos you've watched, all the practices you've done, and come to it completely fresh and completely with an open beginner's mind. And if you do that, I can promise you it will deliver what you are looking for.
So have you got anything that you would like to plug?
Well, I run meditation courses. The Deep Insight course is to do with more like training the mind and looking into your own self-nature through mindfulness practice, essentially. And also the Deep Calm course is the mantra meditation I talked about at the beginning. I teach people that if they want to learn deep relaxation and stress release on demand. So if anybody's interested in that, yeah, check out delvedeep.com, and you can also hang out with me on Instagram under the name That Meditation Guy.
So with that, you are a bit of a hero on Instagram, very good at distilling complex wisdom into bite-sized pieces. I'm a big fangirl of lots of Zen masters, and so any favorite Zen master stories of having Kensho Satori experiences that resonate with you?
Yeah, I like this question. Okay, let me think. There is one Zen master who comes to mind. His name is Bunky. You probably know the name, right? So he was a Zen master who, he's one of the sort of, if I understand it correctly, so tell me if I've got this wrong, but if I understand it, he was kind of like a rebel Zen master in a sense. And his breakthrough experience was that he was meditating and doing all these practices and trying to get this big insight that he'd heard about. And he took it to an extreme. So he was living on his own somewhere in the wilderness, probably in a cave. He had tuberculosis, which in those days would have been a death sentence. So he was pretty much half dead. And it was just struggle and strain and everything. And he must have been in a really, really terrible position at this point. And apparently one day he stopped meditating and just kind of half collapsed, feeling terrible. And he coughed up a load of phlegm. Sorry, this is super gross. But he coughed up a load of phlegm and it kind of like spat against the wall. And as he was sat there in this terrible state, looking at this phlegm drip down the wall, something in him just went, and there it was, his true nature, exactly what he'd always been looking for and trying to break through to in the most bizarre and terrible of circumstances. And this led to him becoming a well-known figure who started teaching. And what I loved about him was he didn't teach in the way that normal teachers go about it with the dogma and the sutras and all the rest of it. He just spoke from his direct experience, just telling everyone, any of the local people, the farmers, or anybody who came to see him, the poorest of the poor, he would just say, look, you all have the unborn Buddha mind right there, and you just have to discover it, and anyone can discover it, and it's right there, right now. And so he annoyed a lot of the people in the Zen world because he was just making it so open and available to everybody. So yeah, he's a bit of a legend as far as I can tell.
So that has made me cry because I have had a direct experience working with What Is My Way, that tuberculosis story. Actually, when I spat out my toothpaste, it was like everything suddenly went into slow motion. It was almost like everything suddenly became a line drawing and slowed down. And as the toothpaste hit the floor, which sounds terrible, I was outside when the toothpaste hit the floor. So there you are.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty great.
Yeah, it's quite the adventure to be on, isn't it? Discovering all of this.
Yeah, I feel beyond grateful, beyond lucky. How did little old me from Arlo in Essex, who had no interest in any kind of spirituality, hated being at a Catholic school, rebelled against everything, how on earth do I have access to this stuff? And yet we all have access to this incredible stuff. So lucky us.
Yeah, same with me, actually. I was brought up Catholic and felt very proud of myself for turning my back on all of that and constantly saying that only things proven by science are the real things and anything else is just childish superstition. But ultimately, I couldn't turn away from what was my own direct experience when I actually looked deeply into these things and experienced it for myself.
And this sense that you pointed to early on in our conversation of this thing, whatever it is, this pull that moves through us, that has us keep turning up on these mad retreats, this thing that wants to awaken as fully as possible and be known. Koan, in a world so wide and vast, why put on robes and follow the bell, Umon. And there is just this resonance, and if you can feel the resonance, and in a way everyone can feel the resonance, there's this knowing that something is missing, and everybody out there, whether they're aware of it or not, is kind of searching for this missing something, this thing that's going to complete me, fulfill me. And here it is, we've got access to it. If we can be bothered to go away for 3 days and face ourselves and a good dose of fear with it. And maybe not everybody, I would like to disclaim, ends up hugging trees and thinking they're elephants. It's been really, really amazing to talk to you. I could listen to your stories and feed off them like an energy vampire all day. Thank you.
And I can't wait to see you tomorrow on the retreat.
Do you want to join us on a 3-day intensive? Jimmy is going to be assisting me on our upcoming retreat. Details are in the show notes. Big love to you wherever you are.